Welcome, everyone. Tonight, as you find your comfortable position, we're going to journey upward. Upward to the mountains, to the high places, to the steep and rocky world. To places where the air is thin, where cliffs rise impossibly high, where one wrong step means falling. And there, in that vertical world, lives a creature of remarkable balance, the Alpine Ibex. These magnificent mountain goats, with their curved horns reaching toward the sky, with hooves that grip impossible surfaces. They don't just survive the mountains, they master them. Walking along ledges barely wider than their hooves, leaping across gaps that would terrify us, climbing walls that seem completely vertical, moving with grace where we would move with fear, living with ease where we would struggle to breathe. How do they do this? How does an animal weighing up to 100 kilograms, over 200 pounds, become so perfectly at home on surfaces where even skilled human climbers need ropes and equipment? Tonight, we'll drift through their secrets, one by one, gently exploring each adaptation, each superpower of the vertical world. There's no hurry. Let yourself settle deeper, and together we'll discover how the Alpine Ibex became the master of the mountains. But before we begin, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel a lot. Let's begin our journey to the high places. The first superpower is their hooves, but calling them just hooves is like calling a masterpiece just paint on canvas. These are precision climbing tools, evolved over millions of years. An ibex hoof has 2 toes, each one movable independently. They can spread apart or squeeze together, gripping surfaces, finding purchase where it seems impossible. The outer edge of each hoof is hard, sharp, made of keratin like our fingernails. This hard edge can dig into tiny cracks, can find the smallest ledge, can grip rock with incredible precision. But the inside, the soft inner pad, that's different. It's rubbery, textured, almost sticky, like the sole of a climbing shoe, but natural, part of their body. This soft pad provides friction, grips smooth surfaces, prevents slipping. The combination is perfect. Hard edges for precision, soft pads for friction. Together, they create a climbing tool better than anything humans have designed. And the hooves wear down naturally as they walk, constantly reshaping, constantly staying sharp, never getting dull, never losing their edge, always perfectly maintained. The ibex can feel through these hooves, can sense the texture of rock, can find grip we can't even see. Each step is precise, calculated, perfect. They walk on surfaces inclined at 60, 70, even 80 degrees. Angles where we would need climbing equipment, where we would rope in, where we would move slowly and carefully. And they walk casually, as if it were flat ground, as if gravity didn't exist. This specialization evolved over millions of years. The ancestors of modern ibex probably lived in foothills, in moderately steep terrain. But as predators evolved, as competition increased, some populations moved higher, higher into the mountains, into steeper terrain, into places predators couldn't easily follow. The ibex, who could climb better, who could navigate steeper surfaces, they survived. They reached food sources others couldn't access. They escaped predators others couldn't evade. Generation after generation, natural selection favored better climbers. Mutations that made hooves more flexible, more grippy, more precise. Those genes spread. The soft inner pad became more developed. The hard outer edge became sharper. The ability to move toes independently improved. The sensitivity increased. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the hoof became what it is now. Not just a walking tool, but a climbing instrument, a precision device, a survival mechanism. Perfectly adapted to vertical surfaces, to rocky terrain, to the high places. We humans, we're not built for this. Our feet are designed for flat surfaces, for walking on level ground. We have arches for shock absorption. We have rigid structures for stability on horizontal terrain. But on steep slopes, on vertical surfaces, we struggle. We need special equipment. Climbing shoes with sticky rubber, harnesses for safety, ropes for security. Even with all this technology, we move slowly, carefully, fearfully on surfaces where ibex walk, casually. A trained rock climber with years of experience, with the best equipment available, would be impressed watching an ibex. The ease, the confidence, the casual grace on surfaces that would challenge Olympic athletes. And the ibex does it with nothing but what it was born with, what evolution gave it. No equipment, no training, just instinct and perfect adaptation. Picture a cliff face in the Alps, early morning, mist still clinging to the valleys below. The rock rises nearly vertical, grey and ancient, weathered by millennia. A young ibex named Ridge stands on a ledge barely 6 inches wide. He's looking up, assessing the route, planning his path. Above him, the cliff continues, steep, imposing, seemingly impossible. But Ridge sees holds we wouldn't notice, sees a path we couldn't imagine. He steps forward, his front hoof finding a tiny crack, his toes spreading to grip. His back hoof follows, finding a knob of rock the size of a coin. He's now on the vertical section, his body pressed against the stone. One hoof moves, finding another hold, gripping perfectly. Then another, a slow upward dance. His hooves flex and grip, his muscles adjust for balance. His breathing stays calm. Within minutes, he's 30 feet higher on another ledge, looking back down. The climb that would terrify most humans, that would require ropes and carabanas and careful planning, he's done it casually. Just another morning, just another route, just another vertical walk. He pauses, chews some grass growing from a crack, completely relaxed. No fear, no stress, no concern. Because this isn't extreme for him. This is normal. This is home. There's something beautiful about this kind of adaptation. The way the ibex's hooves answer every question the mountain asks. It reminds us that impossibility is often just a matter of perspective, of capability, of what you're built for. What seems impossible to us is routine to them. The vertical world that fills us with fear is their comfortable home. Maybe we all have our own version of this, our own impossible made possible, our own adaptations, our own capabilities that let us navigate challenges others couldn't handle. We just need to recognize them, trust them, use them fully. The ibex doesn't doubt its hooves, doesn't question whether it can make a climb. It just climbs, naturally, confidently, perfectly. Maybe we could learn something from that confidence, that trust in what we're built for. Now let's talk about their balance and spatial awareness. Climbing steep surfaces isn't just about grip. It's about knowing where your body is in space, understanding your center of gravity, your weight distribution, your balance point. One wrong shift, one miscalculation, and you fall. And the ibex, they have this understanding perfected. Their inner ear, the vestibular system that controls balance, it's incredibly sensitive. They can sense the slightest shift in their body position, can adjust instantly, can maintain equilibrium on surfaces that change unexpectedly. Their eyes are positioned on the sides of their head, giving them nearly 360-degree vision. They can see where they're placing their feet, can spot the next handhold, can monitor their surroundings, all simultaneously, and their brain processes spatial information with incredible speed and accuracy. Every muscle, every joint, every limb, they know exactly where it is, exactly how it's positioned. This is called proprioception, the sense of body position. In ibex, it's developed to an extraordinary degree. They can place a hoof on a hold they can't even see, trusting their spatial sense, trusting their body awareness, and their core strength, their muscular control. It's remarkable. They can shift their weight in tiny increments, can hold awkward positions for extended periods, can pause mid-climb, perfectly balanced on 3 legs while they reach with the 4th. This level of balance comes from millions of years of selection pressure. An ibex that couldn't balance well would fall, would die, wouldn't reproduce. Only the most balanced, most coordinated, most spatially aware individuals survived. And their genes, their nervous systems, their muscular development, all were shaped by this pressure. Generation after generation, balance improved, coordination refined, spatial awareness enhanced, until we arrived at the modern ibex, who can stand on a surface the size of a dinner plate, on a cliff face, in the wind, completely stable. We humans have decent balance, evolved for walking upright on 2 legs, but our balance is designed for horizontal surfaces, for flat ground. Put us on a steep slope and we struggle. Our center of gravity is high. We're tall and upright, which makes us unstable on inclines. We can train our balance. Yes, we can improve it with practice. Rock climbers, gymnasts, dancers, they develop remarkable balance through years of training. But even the best human climber doesn't have the innate balance of an ibex. We think about our movements. We calculate consciously. We move carefully. The ibex just moves, naturally, instinctively, perfectly. Their balance isn't learned. It's built in, encoded in their genes, refined by evolution. Imagine a narrow ridge, high in the mountains, wind gusting unpredictably. On one side, a drop of 500 feet. On the other, the same. The ridge itself is barely 3 feet wide, irregular, covered in loose stones. A human would crawl, would move slowly, would probably turn back. But an ibex named Summit walks along it casually, almost leisurely. A gust of wind hits her from the side, strong enough to make her sway. But she adjusts instantly, shifts her weight, lowers her center of gravity slightly, continues walking as if nothing happened. Another gust, stronger this time, and she pauses, all 4 hooves planted firmly, waits for the wind to ease, completely stable, completely calm, then continues, her hooves finding secure placement on every step. She reaches a section where the ridge narrows to barely a foot wide, doesn't hesitate, just walks across, placing each hoof precisely, maintaining perfect balance. On the other side, she stops, looks around, chews some alpine vegetation. The crossing that would have terrified any human, she's done it without concern, because her balance is perfect, her body awareness complete, her trust absolute. She knows what she can do, knows her capabilities, knows she's built for this. And that knowledge, that confidence, it shows in every movement, every step, every casual crossing of impossible terrain. There's wisdom in this kind of body awareness. Knowing your capabilities, trusting your balance, moving with confidence. Not reckless confidence, not ignoring danger, but informed confidence. The kind that comes from perfect alignment between ability and action. The ibex doesn't attempt climbs it can't do. It knows its limits. But within those limits, it moves with complete assurance, complete trust. Maybe we could learn from this about knowing ourselves, trusting ourselves, understanding what we're truly capable of, then doing it confidently, without hesitation. Not doubting, not second-guessing, just moving with the certainty that comes from deep self-knowledge. Now let's explore their ability to thrive in thin air. The Alps rise over 15,000 feet in places, over 4,500 meters. At these altitudes, the air contains less oxygen, sometimes 40% less than at sea level. Humans struggle here. We get altitude sickness, we breathe harder, we tire quickly. Even trained mountaineers need time to acclimatize, need to adjust slowly. But Ibex, they live here year-round, moving easily at altitudes that would exhaust us. They're not just tolerating the thin air, they're thriving in it. Their lungs are large, proportionally bigger than ours, with greater capacity. They can take in more air with each breath, extract more oxygen from each inhalation. Their blood contains more red blood cells, the cells that carry oxygen. And those cells are more efficient, binding oxygen more readily, delivering it more effectively. Their heart is strong, pumping this oxygen-rich blood efficiently throughout their body. And their muscles, they use oxygen more efficiently, produce energy more effectively. They can exert themselves at altitude without the fatigue we would experience, can run, jump, climb, all while breathing air that would leave us gasping. This adaptation evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. As ibex populations moved higher into the mountains, into thinner air, selection pressure increased. Individuals who could function better at altitude survived better, reproduced more successfully. Mutations that increased lung capacity, that improved oxygen transport, those spread through populations. Generation by generation, the species adapted, becoming more suited to high-altitude life, until altitude became an advantage, a refuge, a place where they excel, where predators can't follow as easily, where competition is reduced, where they're perfectly at home. We humans, we're lowland creatures originally. Our bodies are designed for sea level, for oxygen-rich air. At high altitude, we suffer headaches, nausea, fatigue, confusion. Our bodies can adapt somewhat, given time. Mountaineers spend weeks acclimatizing, producing more red blood cells, adjusting breathing patterns, compensating. But even fully acclimatized, we're not as capable at altitude as we are at sea level. We're always working harder, always compensating, always at a disadvantage. The ibex, they're not compensating. This is their natural environment. They're more comfortable at 12,000 feet than they would be at sea level. The high places are home, the thin air is normal, the altitude is perfect. Picture a high alpine meadow, summer 13,000 feet above sea level. The air is crisp, thin, the sky impossibly blue. A small herd of ibex grazes peacefully, moving slowly across the slope. A young male named Altitude is feeding, chewing alpine flowers and grasses. He spots another male in the distance, a potential rival, and suddenly he's running, bounding across the steep meadow, racing uphill. At this altitude, a human would barely be able to walk uphill without gasping. But Altitude is sprinting, leaping over rocks, climbing as he runs. His breathing increases, yes, but he's not struggling, not gasping, just running, powerfully, gracefully, at an altitude where we would barely function. He reaches a rocky outcrop, leaps onto it effortlessly, surveys his territory. His breathing steadies quickly, his heart rate normalizes. The exertion that would have devastated a human at this altitude, he's recovered from it in moments. Because his body is built for this, perfectly adapted for high-altitude performance. The thin air isn't a challenge to him. It's just air. It's normal. It's home. There's something profound about this adaptation to altitude, about taking what limits others and making it your advantage. The high places that exhaust most creatures, the ibex has claimed them, made them refuge, made them home, made them perfect. Maybe we all have our own version of this, our own thin air, conditions that challenge others, environments that seem difficult, circumstances that appear limiting. But maybe, with the right adaptations, with the right perspective, those challenges become advantages. The thing that keeps others away becomes the thing that makes us thrive. The ibex doesn't wish for thicker air, doesn't dream of lower altitudes. It's perfectly content in the thin air, in the high places, in its chosen home. And in that contentment, that adaptation, there's a kind of freedom. The freedom of being perfectly suited to your environment, however unusual that environment might be. Finally, let's talk about their social structure and learning. Ibex aren't solitary. They live in groups, learning from each other, teaching the young. The females and young form herds, moving together, feeding together, resting together. The males are more solitary, especially older males, but they still interact, still observe, still learn. And this social learning is crucial for survival in the mountains. A young ibex isn't born knowing every route, every safe path, every dangerous section. It learns by watching, by following, by being taught. The mother leads her kid along safe routes, shows it where to find food, demonstrates climbing techniques. The kid watches her hoof placement, her balance, her decision-making, learns which surfaces are stable, which are loose, which angles are safe. This knowledge, passed from generation to generation, it's cultural in a way, not genetic, not instinctive, but learned, taught, transmitted socially. Certain routes are known, certain feeding areas are traditional, certain winter ranges are ancestral. This information doesn't die with individuals. It's preserved in the herd, in the group. Young ibex learn from all the adults, not just their mothers. They watch successful climbers, they observe experienced individuals, they copy effective techniques. And through this social learning, they become better climbers faster than they would alone. This behavior evolved because social learning provides survival advantages. A young ibex that learns from its mother's experience doesn't have to discover everything through trial and error, doesn't have to test every dangerous surface, doesn't have to find every route the hard way. It benefits from generations of accumulated knowledge, encoded not in genes, but in behavior. Herds that preserved knowledge, that taught their young effectively, they survived better. They avoided known hazards, used proven routes, exploited reliable food sources. And over time, this social learning became more sophisticated, more detailed, more crucial, until now, where ibex culture, if we can call it that, plays a vital role in survival. We humans, we're intensely social learners. Our entire civilization is built on transmitted knowledge, on teaching and learning. But we often forget that we're not unique in this, that other species do it too. Ibex teaching their young which routes are safe. That's culture, that's education, that's knowledge transmission. It reminds us that intelligence takes many forms, that learning happens in many ways, that the ability to pass on knowledge, to teach, to preserve information across generations, that's not uniquely human. It's a powerful evolutionary strategy used by many species in different ways. Picture a steep mountain trail, narrow, winding, exposed. A mother ibex named Guide is leading her young kid down the path. It's the kid's first time on this route, and the exposure is intimidating. Guide moves slowly, deliberately, showing the way. She places her hooves carefully, pauses at tricky sections, looks back to ensure her kid is watching. The kid follows, mimicking her movements, placing hooves where she placed hers. At a particularly narrow section, Guide stops, demonstrates the crossing slowly. Weight on the outside hooves, body close to the wall, careful steps. The kid watches intently, then attempts it, copying the technique. Makes it across successfully, and Guide continues, leading onwards. They reach a fork in the path. One route looks easier, but Guide knows it's unstable, dangerous in certain conditions. She chooses the other route, the one that looks harder but is safer. The kid doesn't understand why, but trusts, follows. This knowledge, this route selection, this understanding of the mountain, it's being taught, passed from generation to generation, accumulated over centuries. Not written, not recorded, but lived, demonstrated, learned through observation and experience. By the time the kid is grown, it will know these mountains intimately, not just through its own experience, but through the collective experience of its ancestors. Knowledge earned through countless lives, preserved through teaching, transmitted through observation. That's the power of social learning, the advantage of culture, even in non-human animals. There's beauty in this transmission of knowledge. The way each generation stands on the shoulders of the previous one, learning not just from their own mistakes, but from the accumulated wisdom of all who came before. It reminds us that we're all connected, all part of a chain of learning that extends backwards and forwards in time. That what we learn, we can pass on, and what was learned before us, we benefit from. The young ibex doesn't have to discover everything alone. It has teachers, guides, examples. And because of that, it can learn faster, go farther, achieve more. Maybe we could remember this more often, about the value of learning from others, about standing on shoulders, about benefiting from shared knowledge, about teaching what we know, passing it forward, contributing to the collective wisdom. Let's step back now and see the whole evolutionary story. The journey of how ibex became masters of the mountains. It begins millions of years ago, ancestors of modern ibex living in flatter terrain. Goat-like creatures, grazing, living in moderately hilly areas. But as climates changed, as predators evolved, some populations moved higher, into the foothills, then into the mountains, then higher still. Each generation, the ones who could handle steeper terrain survived better. Better hooves evolved, grippier, more flexible, more precise. Better balance developed, more sensitive, more accurate, more instinctive. Better lung capacity emerged, larger lungs, more efficient oxygen use, greater altitude tolerance. Social learning became more important, knowledge transmission more sophisticated. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the adaptations accumulated. Simple improvements became major specializations, became perfect designs. Until the modern Alpine Ibex emerged, around 10,000 to 15,000 years ago. Perfectly adapted to high mountains, to steep cliffs, to thin air. They spread through the Alps, through the Pyrenees, through mountain ranges across Europe and Asia. Wherever there were high peaks, rocky slopes, vertical terrain, ibex thrived. But then humans arrived with weapons, with hunting skills, with appetites. By the early 1800s, Alpine ibex were nearly extinct, hunted almost to elimination. Only one population survived, protected in the Gran Paradiso region of Italy. From that small group, numbering perhaps 100 individuals, modern populations have recovered. Through careful conservation, through reintroduction programs, through protection. Now tens of thousands of ibex again inhabit the Alps, living on cliffs, thriving in the heights. A remarkable comeback, a conservation success, a second chance. And now they stand, these magnificent climbers, these masters of the vertical, products of millions of years of evolution, survivors of near extinction, symbols of wild mountains. Every adaptation we've discussed, the hooves, the balance, the altitude tolerance, the social learning, all connected, all part of one story. The story of becoming perfectly suited to an extreme environment, of taking the challenges of the mountains and transforming them into advantages. That's the deep evolutionary tale of the Alpine Ibex. Not a story of conquest, but of adaptation, of fitting in, of becoming part of the mountain itself. So, here we are, at the end of our journey to the high places. We've drifted through the secrets of the Ibex, their superpowers of the vertical world. Their hooves, precision tools evolved over millions of years, gripping impossible surfaces, finding holds we can't see. Their balance and spatial awareness, perfect proprioception, complete body control, graceful confidence on cliffs. Their altitude adaptation, thriving in thin air, living comfortably where we would struggle to breathe. Their social learning, passing knowledge across generations, teaching the young, preserving wisdom. And we've seen how it all evolved, slowly, through selection, through survival, through time. Each adaptation, a response to the mountains, each trait refined by necessity, until the Ibex became what it is, master of the heights, dancer on cliffs, creature of the vertical. But here's what strikes me most as we prepare to drift into sleep. The Ibex doesn't know it's extraordinary, doesn't think about its adaptations. To each Ibex, walking on a cliff is just walking. Living at altitude is just living. What amazes us is normal to them. What terrifies us is comfortable to them. They're just being themselves, just existing in the only way they know how. Following instinct, trusting their bodies, moving through their world. And in that simple being, that complete alignment with their environment, there's a kind of perfection. Not perfection as flawless, but perfection as perfectly suited. The right creature in the right place, doing exactly what it was made for. And maybe that's the real lesson, the thing worth carrying into sleep. That we're all adapted for something, built for some environment, suited to some way of being. Not necessarily the same adaptation, not the same environment, not the same way. But each of us has our own version of hooves that grip, our own form of balance, our own thin air we've learned to breathe. The challenges that seem impossible to others might be our natural terrain. The heights that frighten some might be where we find our footing. The Ibex doesn't compare itself to eagles, doesn't wish it could fly. It doesn't compete with fish, doesn't dream of breathing underwater. It's completely content being what it is. A climber, a mountain dweller, a creature of stone and height. And in that contentment, that acceptance, that perfect alignment, there's peace. Maybe we could learn from that, about accepting what we're built for, about finding our mountains, our vertical terrain, our thin air, the environments where our particular adaptations make sense, where our capabilities shine, not trying to be something we're not comparing ourselves to creatures with different gifts, just being fully what we are, climbing our own cliffs, breathing our own air. So as you drift off tonight, let that settle in. The image of an Ibex on a cliff face, perfectly balanced, completely calm, not fighting the mountain, not fearing the height, not doubting its ability, just being, just standing, just existing in perfect harmony with the vertical world. Trust your hooves, whatever form they take. Trust your balance, your sense of where you belong. Trust that you're adapted for something, built for some terrain, suited to some environment. And when you find it, when you're on your cliff, in your thin air, on your vertical path, you'll know. Because it won't feel impossible, won't feel terrifying, won't feel wrong. It'll feel like home, like natural, like exactly where you're meant to be. Rest now, like an Ibex on a mountain ledge, secure in its footing, confident in its place, at peace with the height. Let the image drift through your mind, settling, calming, centering. You are adapted. You are capable. You are suited to your terrain. Whatever that terrain is, wherever your mountain stands, however steep your path, you have what you need. You are what you need. You're built for this. Sleep now, peaceful, grounded, balanced, like an Ibex in the high places, perfectly at home, perfectly at peace. Everything is well. Everything is exactly as it should be. Good night.